Marvin. This is Noodles and Shredding, Tips Noodles and Shredding, episode 15, and this is in a way part 2 for the Why More is More episode that I made, which was the last episode, and I got some criticism about it from some people who disagreed with me. And I think pretty much all of them, the points they were making against what I was saying was interpreting what I was saying in a way that I didn't mean. So I'd like to address some of the things. Now, one thing I got a few times was telling me how art and music is not like science. And I'd like to address this point. It's true that it's not like science, but not in the sense that a lot of these people were saying. I think science is measured by truth, and truth is measured by fact, right? Something is either true or untrue. And we can quantify things and come up with like pretty concrete, like absolute truths, right? Like these are two hands. And with music, beauty and aesthetics require some sort of like an expert consumer to determine things, especially on the fringes, especially when it gets to more intricate things, right? Like wine. I mean that in the sense that if you just take a random specimen of people and give them, 1,000 bottles of wine ranging from $5 to $50,000 a bottle, it's pretty safe to say that people that don't have a background in wine will not know the difference, right? It takes an expert to have the language connected to the senses to actually put them in a hierarchy of quality. Now, I'm not talking about expert musicians here. And in the previous video, when I was talking about all the things I was talking about from the standpoint of the creator. But now from the other side of the screen, we do have a thing that's an expert listener, a person with a lot of background and a lot of experience consuming music. And these people become kind of authorities, especially when it comes to the fringes of art, like the difference between great avant-garde and meaningless nonsense. So, but I do think that a case can be made for aesthetics being broken up into two poles, into two polarized opposites, right? There's beauty and there's ugliness. And I think in music, in the macro, the big picture, beauty is the point. But when you take a look out of context at a moment, like a piece of music, a frozen second, you can use ugliness to give beauty more meaning, right? So there's a balance between dissonance and consonance in every style of music, and some of them, might be more dissonant, less dissonant. The overall arcing goal is to make something beautiful. Now, if you're like a 21st century composer trying to make a piece of music depicting the horrors of World War II or something, and you use very dissonant tools to do it, it still can be a very beautiful thing, because that's what you're trying to do. But it takes a certain level of mastery and a certain level of control of ingredients, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that it's true that, truth and science don't correlate to music directly, in the sense that when we see a piece of music, we can't absolutely determine if it's good or bad, but it can be measured. And I think through just the experience of measuring it is a little bit more, how should I say it? I don't want to use the term abstract, but it's rooted in something subjective in our experience of beauty. But the more we inform ourselves, the less ignorant we become as listeners, the more we can tap into something more objective, right? There's a language to appreciate things. Some things are better than other things. If you don't believe that, then it's a moot point, and then you're a true postmodernist and everything is equal. But if you think that two things could be measured against each other and you can come up with some real conclusions, then it's just a matter of acquiring the language and acquiring the tools to decide, to determine. Another thing people said to me, and is that, some guy wrote me that he's been teaching in a university for 30 years. The thing he was telling me really shocked, because he said that, he looks at the student and lets the student, the student sets their own goals and I help them get there. To me, that's the most nonsensical way of looking at it. A student, maybe by choosing a teacher, that's his realm of responsibility. And past that, it's really surrender. That's what a student needs to do. He needs to surrender to, surrender his beliefs. There's kind of like, and just absorb what's coming at him until he's done with the teacher. But this idea of, because what kind of judgment, I teach all the time, what kind of judgments can you really make about a person? You know what I mean? It's like you dress like a metal kid, so I'm going to just teach you the tools for metal. It's ridiculous. Like there's physical ways of playing an instrument, right? There's wisdom passed on from generation to generation. I think your goal as a teacher is to ask yourself, what does this person not know how to do? And how do I encourage him to develop all the skills to make a complete player, right? With the best that I know how to do, which means technique mainly and knowledge. Technique and knowledge are the things. So, and it's the responsibility of the student to use the two tools that each one of us is armed with as a student to progress. And those two tools are belief and reason. Right? And the way I think about it is that reason is the way that we examine facts to determine whether what we're doing is beneficial or non-beneficial, working or not working. And then beliefs is how we anchor into reality in a way that allows us the stability for a time period to do something consistently. I believe this is good for a month, right? And exercise. I believe this will get me to the next step. The problem starts happening when belief starts to change your reason. Okay, when and you see it with students all the time, and I think the less is more people, that's what's happening to them. They believe a lot of things. The most destructive belief is that you are good, that you play well when you don't play well, because then you have no incentive to change. And examining reality with reason reason doesn't give you the tools to change, right? You listen to yourself, you sound terrible, but you tell yourself, oh, I sound great. Why would you change? You don't have any reason. Another terrible belief is thinking that one day you'll be good when you're not doing the things that people that became good do. You don't have the discipline and you don't have the practice, but you still feel like you're on the path. How can you be on the path if you're not doing the things? You have to put your time and your energy in the right place. So our beliefs are a very great tool, and they help us stay inside a regimen of practice, stay inside a discipline. But reason will change. If you let reason change your belief over time by examining reality, you can actually progress, right? And you always have to reevaluate your choices. You have to, moment to moment, day to day, you got to ask yourself, well, is it working? Do I need to give it more time? Am I just banging my head on the wall hoping that it will collapse? Can I go around it? Is there a better way to look at it? So the tools of negotiating, by observing reality, observing yourself, comparing to others, those are the tools of reason. Believing is saying, well, reasonably, this takes X amount of time. So I believe that if I do this, for an extended amount of time, I will get better. So believing is really negotiating with the future. We all have a lot of beliefs, but if you got to keep that part of yourself flexible, right? Like if you believe something very deeply, see it and ask yourself, well, why do I believe that? Why is less more? Do I enjoy music that's, like that? Now, another thing, and this leads me to my next point, and this was the big point that people were arguing with me about, but I didn't state it. A lot of people thought that what I said is that complex music is better than simple music. This is absolutely not what I believe. Okay, I'll repeat. I don't believe that complex music is better than simple music. I actually think that simplicity requires the highest degree of emotional complexity. Take a guy like Sinatra or Johnny Cash or Louis Armstrong, right? Giants, bigger than life. The thing that they were doing was so powerful that you could do it with 3 instruments in the mix, put them in the center, and it would be full. It would be fuller than our fullest music, right? Because what they were doing was so complex. Like the sound of their voice raises deep questions. It's completely non-trivial. and they train themselves and they live a life. So it's like there's something about humans executing simple music to the highest degree of perfection that to me actually is the most appealing. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a huge country fan. I love Hank Williams, Johnny Cash, people like that, and they sing one or two notes and it's the most amazing thing. But what's the point? Is the point to sing one or two notes? No, the point is to become Johnny Cash, and very few of us can do it. So you can't, it's something about that attempt, you can't really do it. Now, why is complexity in a sense simpler than simple music, or simpler to achieve? Because it relies on the interaction of a lot of parts, and it's more about assembly. Both of the things have great challenges in them. Simple music has this emotional complexity where you don't need so many parts in the music, and you don't need to use such, kind of fancy ingredients because it's rich enough. Where is the problem? The problem isn't with simplicity, it's with simplistic thinking. And that's exactly what most people are really guilty of. Now, simplistic thinking is rooted in ignorance. It's like people building a 4-piece puzzle like a toddler thinking that it's impressive. It's, a lot of I like to think about it like, imagine you're cooking and then you have 5 ingredients, and you stir them in a pot, expecting it to become something different than those 5 ingredients. It doesn't matter if you stir for 20 years, it's still going to be those 5 ingredients, right? You need to put more shit in there. And that's exactly the process of defeating ignorance. The biggest irony of all this like anti-technique people is that those are the only people limited by technique. Every choice they make is just limited by their limited range of what they've learned and limited by their ignorance. And I think the thing about it is that you really have to learn what's been done before you. People you have to acquire the same tools like Charlie Parker. What's his rhythm bag? What's his harmony bag? As an improviser, as a composer, you gotta ask yourself within your realm, right? What's been done? Because that's the difference between, you can't have a serious conversation with anybody as an expert in something with anybody who isn't an expert in anything. Because being an expert in something really allows you to have a real feeling of what's been done and what hasn't been done. Now, the risk of not knowing it is that you think that what you do is non-trivial, where everything you do is trivial. It's the way you take the elements and put them together, and that's like, a major scale and eighth notes. Blah. A major scale and eighth notes again. Blah. It's like, and it sounds slightly different, yeah, but all that shit's been done a million times, and you're not approaching it from a new angle because you can't decipher what's been done and what hasn't been done, and also you can't see past your own simplistic thinking. So it's kind of it's a prison for a lot of people, and it's a big unawareness. And I don't know, for me standing at the sideline, it's a pretty sad sight. So that's why I said in the earlier video, when I encourage people to snap out of it, measure yourself against great music and start to see the difference. So I don't know. I encourage everybody again to and I'm not saying be like me. I'm saying listen to Louis Armstrong, listen to Frank Sinatra, and then listen to Justin Bieber, and listen to people who are making terrible music and great music. I'm just encouraging the path of non-ignorance, the path of study, and I'm speaking to musicians. That's the other thing. A lot of people have watched this video thinking that I'm talking to you about how to take music in as listeners. I don't know anything about that, really. For the last 17 years that I've been playing, I haven't been on that side of the screen, so we have a different perspective as listeners and as players. And as a player, I don't know, would you trust a mathematician that refuses to study algebra? You know what I mean? Would you trust a sculptor that hates hammers? I mean, it's so basic to just have the mindset to study the language of what you're doing that I don't understand the opposition to the ideas. Tell me what you think. Write back and talk back, and see you next time. I'm Danny Rubin, and Marvin's going on tour. Check out the schedule. See you soon.